Hey everybody, Coach Hughes here with another Be Best You podcast. Again, the idea is no one's going to follow a mess. Everybody kind of laughs at that, but sad truth is it's the truth. People in leadership position want to be respected, and unfortunately, it's what they do, not what they say, and how they act is what is going to get people to follow them. And if you're not as balanced as possible, I'm not saying balanced, but as balanced as possible, no one's going to follow you. So that's kind of the premise of the Be Best You idea. I'm really, really excited to have on today's podcast. I think this is going to be amazingly helpful. Is Rachel Cruze. Hello, Rachel.
Hello. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's an honor. Rachel, if I can, is the daughter of Dave Ramsey. If anybody's not heard of him before, then you don't live on planet Earth. Yeah. There's a whole bunch of resources that, and I'm sure Rachel will speak of it, how it came about. But you've written a book that I came across, and I think this is your latest book here, right? Know Yourself, Know Your Money, and you have a couple other books as well that you've written that I'll make sure that everybody has access to that as well. But specifically, I wanted to kind of speak about this book a little bit. We spoke a little bit earlier about kind of the audience that I'm looking for. Anybody can benefit from this, but this specific audience of, let's say, young people, young managers, young future leaders who are all hard workers, and then they're being asked or told to work smarter. Where do you go? How do I do that? They earn a lot of money. They earn more money than they ever did before, but then they still say they don't have enough when they should, and yada, 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 on and on. And I really loved your book. I have to laugh though, because your dad's podcast and the way he talks, sometimes you feel like you're getting yelled at. You're definitely the softer approach, right?
I would say, yeah, he's kind of like the hard uncle that everyone knows that they have.
Yeah.
And I'm more of your friend where I'm like, I'll sit down and have a cup of coffee and we can talk about it. So yeah, my approach probably is a little bit softer.
Yeah, I listen to it as well. I read it and I listened to him at the same time. And I had to comment on that. I was like, wow, you definitely the nicer side. But your dad's, the effectiveness, I think, of the whole, approach to your approach is you're not punches. I think a lot of people are afraid to do. And you don't pull any punches in your programs, and you really don't pull any punches in the book as well, where you're just kind of really pretty frank about it, which is what's needed. But if you wouldn't mind a little bit about how the evolution of your approach to, one, knowing yourself and smart money, being the best version of yourself. What was the preface of the book?
Yeah, well, we teach about, how to handle your money so much here at Ramsey Solutions. And even when you say, yeah, even though your income goes up, you still feel broke. And that's because your money habits are still the same. And so throwing a different dollar amount onto your money situation doesn't necessarily change it. It actually can magnify it. And so what I wanted to do with this book is really get underneath that system of not just the how to, not just how to budget and how to get out of debt and how to invest and how to give, but really understand why. Why do I do the things I do when it comes to money? And so that why question is big, and it's everything from our personality to our tendencies to our money fears to how we grew up. So much plays into why we handle money the way we do. And so getting to that root system. I saw it was frozen. Yeah. No, you're great. No, you're good. Want to get out of it and. Yeah, I don't know if I should because it's recording. Oh, it is recording. Yeah, good call. He's just off. Oh, there he is. Okay.
Yep.
Are you there? Oh, good.
Yeah. All right. Perfect.
Sorry,
Okay.
John.
I just backed it up. I just put it up on. It is recording. I just put it up. Use the hotspot. I'll use that.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, we're having really bad weather here. I'm not sure if it's how you guys are doing it, so I'm going to assume that's what that's from.
Yeah. Would you want me to just pick up my answer, or did you get that whole answer?
Yeah, I didn't get the answer.
Perfect. Yeah, I can pick up.
So,
I'll pick it up. Yep. Let me just do it from the top.
Okay.
Are you good?
Internet connection is unstable. We are ready to go. Yep. Okay. Let's try that. All
I'll
right.
just pick it up. So at Ramsey Solutions, we talk so much about how to handle money, right? The how to budget, how to get out of debt, how to invest, how to give. And with this book, I kind of wanted to go under the root system, if you will, just to say, okay, why though? Why do we handle money the way we do? And like you said, even though you get a big paycheck and you feel like, okay, the math should be working for me, I'm making more money, so shouldn't I have more left over? But the truth is, your habits still carry with you, and money's a magnifying glass. It makes you more of what you already are. And so just throwing more money on a situation doesn't always help it. In fact, it magnifies the mistakes and the bad money habits that could be in place. And so with this book, hopefully, we can start to uncover those money habits and say, okay, what do I need to change on why I view money the way I do? And that why is everything from your money fears, your personality, your tendencies, how you grew up. So much comes into play with why we handle money the way we do. And so getting to that starting point is so huge for you to be successful long term.
Yeah, I just put a little smart blog out recently where it says, your relationship with money, and your book actually supports a lot of it. Is your relationship with money, about how we were raised, how your parents treated money, and how they communicated that to you. But your relationship with money has a lot to do with all your other relationships, and if you're, again, the divorce rate due to finances, you know if your relationship with money is not healthy, then it's a good chance a lot of the other areas of your life are unhealthy. So that balanced life is not really good. So and I love how in the beginning of your book too, which is great, you even talk about that a little bit, your personal mindset, and you speak about your classrooms, which I love. Your classrooms being nurture and nature, and can you explain a little bit about how that approach to your mindset?
Yes. Well, your home growing up, your childhood home, if you will, that was your classroom for life. It's where you learned a lot of your lessons, and some lessons you take with you into adulthood. Some lessons you want to leave behind and say, I'm not going to carry that on. But we all learn life through our home and through how we grew up. And so with the money, what I realized is money's really communicated in two ways in a household. It's communicated verbally, so the words that are used and the way it is said, but it's also communicated emotionally. And so there can be a very stressful emotional state in the household when it comes to money, or it can be very calm on the other side. And so kind of looking at these different ways of how it's communicated kind of creates this quadrant of the way it's communicated verbally and emotionally. So there's these 4 money classrooms that I talk about, and one of them is how you grew up and identifying that. So the first is the anxious money classroom, where it's verbally closed. So money's not talked about verbally, but it's emotionally stressed. So you felt the stress, but it wasn't said. The second was an unstable money classroom. So this is where it's verbally open. You heard about money, but it was also very stressful. So probably a lot of conflict, a lot of fighting. Your parents probably were on edge a lot growing up, and you felt that tension. Classroom 3 is the unaware classroom. So this is where it's verbally closed. Money's not talked about, but it's emotionally calm. And so this household really was, your head was probably in the sand when it came to money. You probably didn't even think about it because it wasn't a topic or an issue. And then when you got on your own, you thought, oh gosh, I got to figure this out. And then the fourth is definitely the healthiest, and it's the stable money classroom. And so this is where it's verbally open. So money is talked about, but it's emotionally calm. So you know what's going on. Your parents, or parent talk to you about it, but then also there's a calmness, and you don't have to have a lot of money to be in that classroom number 4, but it's just the fact that money was in control. There was a plan in place, and you knew what was going on.
Yeah, I mean, I identified as you go through the book, I identified. So when I was younger, my dad was a gym teacher, the oldest of 4. We didn't grow up with not a lot of money, but we didn't have really a lot of things some of my friends had. So the emotional part was kind of quiet, but we didn't really know. Now, there's certain things in my early career decisions I made probably because of that. Now what's happening is my daughter is a senior in college. I'm doing well financially. And what I realized in the book was I'm kind of training my daughter to maybe have some trouble moving forward, because while I don't feel like I'm spoiling her, she doesn't have to go to work because she's a collegiate athlete as well. So here she is, she's studying, she's able to go to college, really debt free. But is that going to create potential problems moving forward? And I'm going to say, I think it is. And what was nice about your book, it kind of woke me up, where my wife and I actually spoke quite about this recently, where we need to sit down with Michaela, my daughter, and be like, all right, this is what happened. This is why we did it. But this is something you need to be, we need to be aware of. So yeah, all four of those, two of the classrooms in particular, I resonated with. And I think whoever reads the book, you'll find yourself in each one of those for sure.
Yeah, and I think the encouraging thing too is, obviously she has an incredible work ethic, being a collegiate athlete, all of that. And I think again, it's just that reminder for parents as you're creating your current home, if you do have kids in the household, it's just that open communication. And that's everything from the tactical side of money, of you being the one to explain what is a mutual fund, right? Like, or what, here's how to do a budget. And it's those tactical sides, but it's also the other sides of money that are not so tactical, of talking about contentment and what does it look like to live in a spirit of humility and generosity, right? So there's kind of those conversations to be had, but also just to encourage you, I think more is caught than taught. Your example is huge. And she watched a dad who really grinded it out and worked really hard for what he did. And so for you and your wife, that picture that you paint without even saying a word is a huge example too. And so for parents out there, it's really both. And that's one maybe motivation to start handling your money well, for those of you listening, is because your kids are watching what you're doing, right? If you're stressed out and you automatically just go and you just dive into social media and check out, your kids notice that. Or if you get in a fight and you leave the house with your spouse and you come back with bags from Target, your kids see that, right? So it's amazing, that example that's out there. So that's one reason too, to really get control of your money and handle it in a really healthy way, where you control it versus it controlling you, because it not only helps you, or if you're married, your marriage, but it's also that legacy that you end up leaving with your kids.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm glad you said it, because I mean, part of it, when you go through this self-evaluation process, find out what classroom you were raised in and what classroom you continue to stay in, I guess is a way I would say it, is I felt a little guilty. I was like, oh, I why did I do that? And
I don't want
am
you to feel
I doing
guilty.
something wrong?
I don't. Well, there is, and money brings a lot of guilt and a lot of shame, and I don't want that. I want you to be, I don't want the reader to feel that. But a wake up call, when you said that, I was like, okay, I resonate with that, just to make it aware and to
I'm
say,
Irish.
okay, wow, it's for. There you go. That's part of it.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I'm going to blame it on that.
That's right.
Okay, so I could think that maybe that's what it's from. I don't know, but yeah, I guess maybe guilt isn't the right word, but I just was like, oh wow, I mean, my intentions were that I want to give my daughter not what I didn't have, because I wasn't like I was horrible, but I think every generation wants to work hard to give their next kid's generation an easier chance, but then we end up unknowingly potentially spoiling them. And I think it's interesting too, is you start off right away in the front cover, it says discover, and in capital letters, why. And anything you listen to anything about leadership or personal development or thought leadership today, the why thing is so prevalent, especially with this age group that we're talking about. I grew up where I didn't ask a lot about money, and when I did, it wasn't don't worry about it. It was none of your business, and it was like, I got it. But I always remember watching my dad sitting there with a little checkbook at the ting every day, just writing bills out, and we never went without, but I never understood the why behind you need to take care of your money now, early, as opposed to, I have time, right?
Yeah, that's exactly
so the why.
right.
If you could speak to how important the why is in all this.
Yeah, well, I think it's everything. Again, it's getting back to what is causing your behavior with money in the first place. And so again, some of it is your tendencies and your personality, which I think is just fascinating, that some of us are naturally more spenders. Naturally, others are more savers. Naturally, some people just always look at the abundance of life. Some people just naturally look at the scarcity of life. Some people want to spend money on experiences and vacations and concerts, when others, they want actual tangible items. They want to spend their money on things. And so just really getting to that root system of understanding, okay, who am I? Why am I doing the things I'm doing? And they're not all bad. And I think that's part of it too, is there's not a right or a wrong in anything. I think sometimes in the financial world, for instance, like the savers, they get like the blue ribbon and they get the applause that they're like the good ones. And I'm like, no, I'm a natural spender. And I'm like, you can still be wise with money and love to spend money as well. And so really finding that balance, I think, is important. But yeah, the asking that why question, again, it gets to the heart of what's going on. And that's a big part of your motivation with money. And it's also very convicting to realize a wake up call of like, oh my gosh, I do that. Okay, so now that I'm aware of it, I can actually start to make changes in my life because I know what's going on.
Yeah, and I keep thinking of, going into a relationship. It's really, marriage is an act of God. It's one thing, it's sacrament, but in the man's world, it's a business agreement. Um, and I tell a story here in my class. I won't tell the whole story, but my wife and I got married a little over 4 years ago. We went to pre-Cana for the Catholic faith, and the last class we went to was a large class with maybe 40 other couples, and we were the second oldest couple in the room. And the gentleman, wasn't the priest at the time proctoring it, said, all right, gentlemen, go to these tables, and ladies, go to this table and turn to page 19 of your workbook. And at that point, everybody, people were floating around the room and holding hands, and it was, canoodling, and everybody was looking in each other's eyes lovingly. And then they turned to page 19, which was a personal P&L. And it was like the Phantom of the Opera came in, and it was dark clouds and lightning came in the room. But what struck me was nobody moved. And then finally the guy said, no, you guys got to get up and move. And he's done this before, because the dramatic part is he tapped on the microphone and he said, if you don't, 52% of you will be divorced in 5 years. And I was like, wow, I had been through a divorce, and kind of part of it was financially, but I was like, wow, that's before people get married. And that's what you're telling them. That's how important the why is. And going back to what you just said, is I laughed at your example of your husband is kind of, you're more of the spender of the two.
Yes.
And, he's that. And I think that I kind of resonated a little bit of that, because I think every relationship needs to understand the why behind that. And that you need to work together, because it's a business partnership at the end of the day. Right.
Yeah, well, and when your spouse says, you're one in every area of your life, and there's an intimacy factor there when you say, hey, we're locking arms for life, and we're doing this together. We're going to be changing jobs together. We might be moving states together. We might be starting new ventures. We're going to have kids. Like, we are doing this together. And sadly, the money part of it, still, people kind of put this flag in the ground and say, this is still where I'm going to have my independence, and this is where I'm still going to do my own thing. And I think it's a detriment to a lot of people. And this is a very countercultural message. A lot of people are like, no, you hold your own and you have your own money regardless of your marital situation. But I really do think when you come together as a couple and you embrace your differences, right? A spender and a saver. This is Winston and I. When we have those moments of frustration or what may be, that I want to spend more than he does and all that, and we have a little bit of that conflict, that is good, because you're actually having the conflict. You're having the conversation. You're communicating about it, and you're getting a resolution together because you're on the same team. And I think avoiding those things, you end up living these separate lives, not just financially, but even just in life. You start to run these two races, and it's like, oh my gosh, but when you can come together as one and actually have the disagreements that you may need to have, and hopefully they don't last forever, and you start to be on the same page and understand each other and all of that. But man, that stuff is so, so important, and doing it well, right? You want to have respect for each other. There's a way to do all that very negatively, and I'm not a proponent of that, but how you do it well and work on the same team. And couples that can work together and strive to financial goals together, they get there faster. And it's more enjoyable in the process of a journey, whether you're sacrificing to get out of debt or you're saving up to pay for kids' college, whatever the thing is. When you come together and even combine your incomes, combine your energy, your mindset, and you guys work together, it creates a level of unity that is so, so important. And I feel like we live in a world that it's pushed to the sides, and I think it's a detriment to married couples, really.
No, it is. And I remember something else they said was, it's kind of that trick question, but is it, what percentage is your responsibility of the marriage? And not most people would say, well, 50-50. And the guy's like, nope, it's 100%, 100%. And, especially with the young people today, the finances, I'm like, look, when you're in love is great, But at the end of the day, it's a business agreement. I hate to tell you, but the only person who makes money is the divorce lawyer, and it's not meant to be sarcastic or funny. It's reality, and a lot of it's due to what you speak through the book is that personal relationship with your own money.
Yes.
And understanding that for yourself, but then also your partner. Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think too, having a level of empathy, right? So Winston and I go through about 7 money tendencies in the book, and we are literally we're opposite on all of them. Like whatever it is, like we really do. We are such opposites in that way. But yet there's this level of empathy, and I think too in a marriage, having this underlying value system that we very much agree on. How we live that out may look a little bit different when it comes to money on the tactical side. But we still are striving toward the same goals, to the same future. We want the same thing. We want peace of mind. We don't want to be stressed with money. Like we want the same thing. And so learning to appreciate that about the other person. I look at Winston, I'm like, he gives me such a gift and so much of his perspective. And I think I give him a gift, even the spender saver example. I'm like, I tell him all the time, I bring fun to your life. We actually have a life and enjoy it. And if you want a new pair of shoes, I mean, it's in the book. Yes, go get it guilt-free, right? Like I'm that cheerleader, and he's the one that has 18 Excel spreadsheets looking at every little goal that we have, and he keeps us on track. Yeah. So seeing the strength in it, and I know that sounds like rose-colored glasses, because it is hard, when the rubber meets the road and you're sitting there and you're having a really hard conversation, it is difficult. But I think too, having those big value conversations that you're on the same page helps when it comes to a marriage.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, and it's and again, when we talk about work, we talk about marriage, but any relationship, communication and transparency is important to build trust. Yes. Especially as a leader, who's going to follow somebody that's saying one thing and doing something else. That's one of the things we do is I teach a business P&L, and I kind of I don't forget what it was. I realized that I can teach a business P&L, top line, bottom line, all the costs in the middle, expenses. And I realized one day that a personal life is a business. And what I tell everybody is like, whatever today's date is, and if I was teaching that particular class on that day, I would say, what's today's date? How many of you guys want to own your own business? Most everybody raised their hand. I said, all right, what's today's date? We look at the date on the calendar, and I said, well, congratulations, you're all in business together. And what I do is I draw a line down the middle of a piece of paper, and I write their store on the top, and then I write your last name on the other side. And I say gross sales, gross pay, taxes, net pay, net sales. And then we start comparing rent, phone, all the different. And then you have, I call it a should or shouldn't statement, or a have or haven't or have not statement, meaning what a lot of people will say is, I don't make enough money. And I'm like, well, do you have a budget or a P&L? And they're like, well, no. I go, I think you make enough money. They get kind of mad at me. And I'm like, well, and I'm not a financial advisor by any means, but what I say is a lot of people make enough money. They just don't have it. And working another job or making more money doesn't mean you're going to have more money. It's your choices and your habits, which you spoke about earlier, that can enable you to make money with the same amount of money you're bringing in. Sometimes I have to follow my own thoughts lines there, but I think that made sense.
That's it. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's what's fascinating too, is especially for business owners, they can do such a great job with their intention on the business side, and then they can be so sloppy on the personal side. And you are one person, right? Like you are a whole person. And so the habits you have on the business side is naturally going to seep over. So that's why it's so important to say, hey, here's my household budget, and I'm going to do this so well. I'm going to stick to it, because those habits you're creating on that side is going to bleed over to the business side, because you're the same person. You're using the same brain. And I think we can compartmentalize, or we think we can, this side versus that side, and you're still the same person. And so getting those good money habits on your business, absolutely. But as well on your household side, and the budget's the same. It's your income minus expenses equals 0. And people that do not have a budget, specifically on the home side, I would encourage you so much to. I know it has such a word with baggage, and it makes it feel like life isn't fun on a budget, and a budget is going to say, I'm going to have to say no all the time. But really, a budget is permission to spend. A budget gives you permission to spend your money on the places you want to spend. And it's also the state of the union that when you actually do it and you see, here's all my money going out, all of it, you'll see how much you are paying in that car payment. You're going to see how much is going out to student loans still. You're going to see the credit card debt. And it really is this light that is shown on your financial situation that may even motivate you to say, man, if I didn't have all those payments, how much would I have left over? You know, how much of it is going out to other people versus me being able to keep it. And so it does, it gives you this picture. And then it also gives you a plan of control, because when you actually know where your money's going, you never again are going to question, is this okay? You know, at the grocery store, it's like, oh, is this too much? Are we gonna have enough for that, this and that? Like none of that, none of those questions are there because it is answered on paper. And man, it gives you a sense of control where finally you're the one that's telling your money what to do versus it telling you what to do.
Yeah, no, I say, you work hard for your money. A lot of times you're working hard for other people's money. What's your money doing for you is one of the little
Yes.
slides we have. The other thing is, so, um, when you're in a hole, when you're in a financial hole, a lot of times, oh gosh, it's crippling, obviously, right, for a lot of people. And they think that making more, in your story, you actually talk about somebody who, I think it was lending money to your parents and not doing that. But it reminded me of a podcast I listened that your dad did, where a mom was talking about her son who was a semester away from graduating, and they had been paying for school, and he only had one semester left, and she wanted to know when the son should start paying it back. And and your dad was like, he's not going to. And she kept talking, and your dad kept saying, you're not listening to me. My wife and I were like, oh boy, he's getting on her hard here. But by the end of it, he got her to realize that, listen, your son's not going to pay you back. Not going to happen because he's not going to finish this school. But when I show people their personal P&L and they actually do it, there's a lot of people in the room that lose color in their face. You can see their breathing starting to change, and it's overwhelming. And then they think that in order to get out of it, they have to make more money. And it's not so much that. Sometimes it's not, maybe it's moving home. Maybe it's not living in your own apartment. Maybe it's selling your car and getting a cheaper car. Maybe it's riding the bus to work. But making more money isn't always the answer. It's the habits and the choices, right?
Yes,
The best.
absolutely.
I'm not asking you for the best way to get out of debt, but what would be the first thing you might need to do to get started in that direction?
Yeah, well, I think realizing that money flows two ways. Money flows in with your income and money flows out. And so knowing
Yeah.
that both sides of those equations you could have impact on. And so what does that look like? And so I'd say the first way to get out of debt is get $1,000 starter emergency fund. Get $1,000, put it to the side, and then everything else, all of your money, all of your energy, all of your time, your thoughts, everything has to be focused on getting out of debt, because you can wander your way into debt, but you're not going to be able to wander your way out. If you want to get out of debt quickly and efficiently, you have to be focused. And it's amazing. We live in a world that everyone's ADD, right? You're doing 18 things at once. I mean, I'm on my cell phone watching TV, trying to parent. I mean, it's crazy. But when you can actually focus on one thing at a time and actually have momentum towards it, you start to see progress. So getting out of debt, we encourage people to do the debt snowball, where you list out your debt smallest to largest, regardless of the interest rate, pay minimum payments on everything, and you attack that smallest one first.
Right.
And people think, well, mathematically, shouldn't you pay off the highest interest rate first? But the truth is, if we were doing math, we wouldn't be in credit card debt in the first place.
Yeah.
So it's not a math problem to what you're saying. It is a habit problem. It is the way that we view money and the way that we handle it. So you have to change that. And by paying off that smallest debt first, you actually have hope. Like you actually pay it off and you think, wow, we actually paid that off. Like I did that. That's amazing. And then you go to the second smallest and you keep moving your way up. And so it will take some sacrifice of your lifestyle. Like you said, you're going to do the budget and you have 9 subscriptions. You're probably going to cancel a bunch of those and go down. You look to see how much you're eating out at restaurants at night. And you may say, you know what, I'm going to cut back on that. You may say, you may be looking at these categories that you're spending a lot. Food, even where you grocery shop, you may change the store that you shop at. Like you said, if you can't pay off your car in 18 months, you're probably going to sell it and get a cheaper car for now. And so there's these things you can do within the expenses side for sure. to be able to help you get out of debt. But then also that income side for a period of time while you're paying off debt to get the momentum even more. You could, maybe go take a part-time job if you have the bandwidth to do that, or a side hustle just to bring in that extra income to throw at the debt to get you out of debt that much faster. But there is a freedom, not just financially, to be debt free when you don't owe anyone anything, that your income is yours. You actually are the one that gets to decide what to do with it. But there's a emotional, and I think even a spiritual side of freedom, that you actually get to sleep at night. You're not worried that Toyota Motor Company owns a part of your life. It's not there anymore when you don't have a car payment. So there is such power to become debt free. And we see everyone, John, from every income level to every debt level, do this. And the one common denominator they have is that they believe that they can, that they have the ability to make choices in their life, to see movements. And that is empowering for people when they know, I can wake up every day and I have choices to make.
Yeah.
And I can make choices towards the betterment of my future versus waiting on someone else to take care of me. There is something to be said about that proactiveness that really changes the game.
It's fun. One of the things that's examples that the compound interest example you guys used were the $47 a day for 9 years. And I love that. And when I show that to people, people are like, wow. And I go, how many of you guys can put $47 away? And nobody really, a couple of people do. Most people say I don't. And I say, all right, well, what about 46? And they're like, it's the same thing. I'm like, no, but I get it. And then I'll say, how about 7? And when I teach that, I see it. But there was one thing that I struggle with, and maybe you can kind of help out, is if you're going to put money away, like say $1,000. Okay. So I don't have the $1,000 right now, because I can hear somebody say, well, I don't have $1,000 right now. But you don't need $1,000. You put 10 in, then 20, and then 50, and then eventually you have 1,000. But what might be more effective or important is having the savings or paying off the debt.
I think long-term paying off the debt, but I think the savings, getting that $1,000, which I totally agree with you, right? Most people are like, oh my gosh, I don't just have $1,000.
Yeah.
And most people don't, but I would say to try to get it in 30 to 60 days, whether that means selling stuff, cutting your expenses, because that first step, getting that $1,000, which for some people, it's the very first time they've ever had $1,000 of cash just sitting there that they're not going to use.
Yeah.
It's amazing what it does, though, because number one, you've accomplished a goal. But number two, you're saying out loud into yourself of like, okay, I'm going to change the way I've been viewing money. Like if you are not happy with your current situation financially, if you keep doing what you've been doing, you're going to keep getting what you've been getting, right? That's like the definition of insanity. And that's what so many people do. But when you stop to say, I'm going to save that $1,000 that crazy woman on that podcast I was listening to encouraged me to do, what you're saying is I'm changing the way I'm going to do my money. I'm going to do something different. And the truth is too, that change is hard. Change is uncomfortable. We don't like it. Even if what we're doing isn't working, it's still predictable. We still feel comfortable in it because we know what to expect. And so to change that, man, it is hard. I have 3 little kids at home, and I took all the car seats out of the minivan. Yes, we have a minivan as a family. It's a great car. Never thought I'd be that mom, but I am that mom. And I put the car seats back in, but I switched my 3-year-old and my 1-year-old on accident. And my 3-year-old threw a fit as we were getting in to go to preschool the next morning, because she was like, no, Mom, this is not my side of the van. This is not my window. She just was panicked. And I thought, even at 3, it's hard to change, even just where you sit in the car, because it's not comfortable. It's not what you know. So I would say it's a long-term, being out of debt, not owing anyone anything is a huge play. But man, that first $1,000, it's not just that $1,000 that you're saying that you're saving up for. It's a mindset shift at that point where you say, I'm going to do something different. And that's exciting. I mean, I love that.
Yeah. And we talk about, habits and then choice and change. And, one of the things that, we do talk about, I have a process. It's over the 5 days. On day 1, they do a life assessment. The end of day 1, we talk about the 7 habits. We use Stephen Covey, and then we talk about some other things. And then we tell people you can't be who you want if you continue doing what got you here. And then we use the mirror and the mirror and the windshield, use a lot of those analogies and stuff. But, it's that short-term pain for a long-term pleasure that people just can't get past. Like, it's like, I hear you, but that's going to make me feel better. That short-term satisfaction of that new, whatever it is.
Yes, yes.
You think that's going to make you feel good. And then 3 months later, you don't even know where that is. So it's that pattern of thinking, of mindset that you speak about quite a bit, through the book. But
Yeah, the sacrifice part, it is hard, but it's not for your whole life. And that's what you have to have perspective. And you have to be able to say, okay, we're going to do this for 24 months, for 36 months, however long it is to get out of debt. And that sacrifice, it's not forever. If I was telling people to drive crappy cars, never go on vacation, anything, just for the heck of it for your whole life, no, I wouldn't want that life. Like, that's not what I want people for. That's not the life I want for people, but for a period of time with an end date and map it out. Cause I always love to see, okay, I can do anything for 2 years. It's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy, but for 2 years, this is what we're committed to. It's not your whole life. And so that's the encouraging thing, is that there is an end date eventually, but the faster and the deeper you sacrifice, the faster you're going to see results.
yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of questions I would love to ask. I know, but I think that what I will do is during every week. By the way, I give away 2 of your books every week.
Thank you.
We raffle them off. And different books different authors I've had the opportunity to speak to and stuff. But the money thing is so important that we've built that into our curriculum, because if we have, what I'll say to an owner of one of our businesses, I'll say, if you're going to ask a manager to manage your $1 million investment, then you need to know how they're running their personal life. Now, you got to be careful when you're asking those kind of questions in an interview. But one of the things I'll say, well, why do you need a job? And they'll say, well, I need money. Okay. Why do you need money? Well, because I have to take care of my family. Well, that's tells me that you're responsible. If the answer is as well, because, I got a lot of credit card debt, I'm probably not going to hire that person. I'm not saying I'm not going to, but that tells me the reason you need a job is because you have debt. And by you taking the job, does that mean the debt's going to go away? And the chances are no, because of how they've lived to that point. You also spoke in here too, which I thought was interesting, is your habits and your choices. And then you borrow money, or somebody endows you money or some way, and you think, oh, this is what's going to get me out of this. But then all of a sudden you're right back in it again. You're like, how did that happen? Yeah. Maybe I'll just get another $1,000 from this person. It's again, how the choices you make every day, short-term right now, are going to affect the long-term, right?
Yes, absolutely. And just for encouragement for people, that your past and the mistakes you've made does not have to dictate your future. And I think we can get stuck on that, especially with money. So many parts of our lives you don't have like data for, right? I could say I'm a good mom or I'm a great wife, but there's no number to that. But with our money, there is a number, and it stares people in the face. And what ends up happening is that our net worth has become our self-worth, for the good or the bad. And that's just not the case. That number does not identify who you are. Now, do your financial mistakes follow you? Do you have to climb out of that hole of debt that maybe you got yourself into? Yeah, you do. You got to face what you did, but that doesn't mean that has to continue on. That's the encouraging part of the choices we get to make. You get to make different choices. So I don't want people to feel like, man, I'm terrible at money and I always will be, because that's not the case. Yes, you'll have to face your past, right? Like I always think about the Lion King with Rafiki and the little monkey and his staff that he hits Simba. He's like, yeah, the past hurts, but you can't deny it, right? So we want to be able to face it and deal with it. But that means that going forward, we don't have to make the same mistakes that we've made.
Well, I just got my quote. So I'm not sure if you came up with that or but I love it. Your net worth does not, would say, don't let your net worth become your self-worth.
Yes.
Yeah. That was my light bulb moment there. That's so true. Because I think today, maybe that's the staying up with the Joneses analogy, but it's like your status or your success is based on how much money you're making. That's not.
No, it's hard. And because money is a tool, right? Money enhances your life. Sure, it's nicer to drive a car that has air conditioning and the windows work versus a crappy car where none of that works, right? Like there's obviously things that it's nice to have, and it lowers your stress. You can buy plane tickets if your mom's sick in a different state and you don't think twice about it if you have the money. So it definitely enhances your life. But it is not the end all be all. People that chase that, the finish line always moves as well. People think, well, if I could just make a hundred, six figures, I'll be okay. And then the people that make six figures are like, well, I gotta make 500,000. And then it just keeps going up.
Yeah.
That finish line will always move. And so it's so much more important with the principles and the values that you have in place. And that's one reason giving is such a huge part of my message as well, to be generous with this stuff, because when you are so self-focused, that's also going to bleed into other areas of your life, whether it's your marriage, your parenting, your friendships. So a selflessness too in this world is really, really important with your money.
Wow, it's kind of a perfect way to kind of close this out too, because you just said something that we talk about is that when you take care of yourself first, a lot of people think that that's being selfish, and there is selfishness to it in some examples. But when you don't take care of yourself, that's selfish, and taking
Yeah.
care of yourself is selfless. And a lot of people who are in a position of leadership always taking care of other people. And at the detriment of themselves, and financially is a big piece of it.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, one of my favorite books is Thou Shalt Prosper by Rabbi Daniel Lapin, and he's a Orthodox Jewish rabbi, and he
what's
has
it
this
called?
picture, Thou Shalt Prosper. It's kind of heady, but he talks about how the
Okay.
Jewish community tends to thrive, and he goes through all of history, but even financially. So it's fascinating, the principles there. But he talks about a havdalah, which is a cup and a saucer. But it's this
Okay.
beautiful picture of filling up your cup, so that way the overflow there is for people. And so you can't overflow into other people's lives, whether it's in leadership and business or relationally or financially. Yeah, when your own cup isn't even full. So there's a really important part there of taking care of your own household first. And then out of that, you're able to be really generous.
Yeah, I just went through a pretty interesting coaching experience where a gentleman just asked me flat out, and he asked me right in the middle of another question because I think he was trying to set me up so I didn't think about the answer. And you may have heard of it. I never heard of it before. Was if you won $1 million, what would you do first? And I said, don't think about it, just say it. And first thing I said is take care of my family, you know, and I think that's a mindset of giving. If you have, lots of time you can give without having anything, but you can give a lot more when you do have stuff as well.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a big part of our company's mission statement. It's called giving, making a difference in someone's life. So
Love
by
that.
having money, that allows you to do a lot more than just buy stuff.
That's right.
All
That's
right.
right. Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah. And I encourage
So
people
I
to be
guess,
giving in all of it, right? Even if you're saving up for your $1,000 or getting out of debt, as much as we talk about sacrificing, I always say give a little until you can give a lot, because again, that's a habit that is created. And when you can do it even a little bit, when you don't feel like you have a lot, but you're still creating, kind of building that muscle, then once you actually start building wealth, that muscle is already created. And that's what's magnified as well. So I think all of it, yeah, is so key. But man, when you don't have payments too, when you're not paying MasterCard and
yeah,
car loans and Sally Mae, you suddenly have a lot of freedom there with that money to help your family and also to be generous.
yeah. The last thing is, the idea of the be best you in order to lead others. If there was one thing you would, speak to somebody that's trying to become the best version of themselves, what would be, when it comes to money or finances, what would be kind of a quick, hey, start in this direction, put this is the first step in many steps, but what would be the first step someone should take maybe?
I mean, it's kind of tactical, but I would say
Okay.
have kind of a money state of the union, because a lot of people don't even know where to start.
Okay.
They're like, okay, you say to create a budget. I don't know
Oh,
how
great.
much I'm spending on groceries or gas. You say get out of debt. I have no clue what my debt is. So compile all of your numbers, list out all of your debts, and know exactly the dollar amount to the penny of what you owe. And then also look back about 3 months, even on your bank account, to say, okay, how much am I spending on average on the big stuff? So whether it's mortgage and rent, utilities, transportation, your gas, insurance, food, miscellaneous, like go through and list. We have an app called Every Dollar. There's a free version, so that could even give you a template to start out. But just get all your numbers in front of you. My friend Dr. John Deloney says that facts are your friends. So it's amazing when you just have
Mm,
these hardcore numbers in front of you, these black and white numbers, right? They're looking at you on an Excel sheet or an app, whatever it is. Then you actually can start to say, okay, here's where we're at. And so instead of living in denial or trying to like, you don't want to look there because it may be hard, I would say face it all, rip the band-aid off and have that State of the Union.
yeah. No, that's perfect because that kind of goes in line with our first step here is like, who are you right now?
Yes.
And then you could talk about how you got there. Now, Well, one, I recommend the book because one, it's an easy read. You it's not too technical. You integrate a lot of really, stories that people can relate to. And then you also have the two parts to the book. So it's a really good roadmap to follow. I think all the materials that your entire company produces are very easy to, because people get intimidated when it comes to money. And I hate the term dumb it down, and I hate the term simplify it but you make it easier for lots of people to not be intimidated by it.
No, well, I'm glad to hear that because one of our values is just cookies on the bottom shelf. You don't have to have an MBA to be successful with money, right? It is there. So I'm glad that comes across because that's part of our hope.
No,
sure.
It does. It's great. So the book itself, and then obviously the whole Ramsey organization, a lot there. The other thing, and we get into it, but I always hear a lot of people say, yeah, but, I'm like, listen, you don't have to buy the book. There's so much free, amazing material that the Ramsey organization puts out there. You don't have to buy anything. You can listen to his podcast. There's sheets. There's evaluations. There's so many tools that you guys have given, and thank you for that to people. So, what would be the best way to learn more about you and what you're doing specifically?
Yeah, you can go to rachelcruze.com and everything is on there. It's tied to ramseysolutions.com as well. So, yeah, like you said, lots of content there. I have a podcast and a YouTube show. I actually just launched a new podcast 2 weeks ago with our other Ramsey personality, George Camel, and we co-host. It's called Smart Money Happy Hour. So it's just once a week, but it kind of talking about pop culture, what's going on in the world when it comes to money. It's a lighter, more fun, hopefully you laugh kind of podcast. Because like you said, money, it can be intimidating and there can be a lot of guilt and shame with it. And so just being able to relieve people and say, okay, you can start anywhere. So that's an easy one to get in, but also the Ramsey Show as well. It's on podcasts and radio stations all across America.
Awesome. Yeah. And I really, really appreciate you coming on. It's an honor. And obviously New York bestseller, and you're leaving the legacy. And I understand your dad is kind of, I had two acquaintances of mine went down to the leadership conference in Nashville a couple weeks ago.
Oh, yeah.
I guess your brother, one of them got to speak with your brother, I guess, right?
Yes. Yeah. My brother. Yep. Yes.
Yep. And, but you got the new facility. Was that opened yet?
Yes, we do. Yeah. So we moved into this, I guess it's been about 2 years ago. So 2 big office towers, studios, all galore. We have a event center that's being built up kind of on this hill on the property. So it's been great. It's been able to let us work a whole lot more efficiently than what we were doing before.
And it's a great group. I mean, your dad's story going background way early and then building his business. And, obviously there's a lot of faith-based stuff through it as well, but not in your face at all. For, a lot of people get offended by different stuff, but, I appreciate it. We use a lot of and we have our library of success. My toolbox is what I refer to. And I say that your book is the Rams, Smart Money is the first one. And now we have this book that we've been adding to it as well. So
awesome. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Yep.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, John. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Rachel. Yeah, no problem. And so this is Coach Hughes and Rachel Cruze with another Be Best You podcast. We'll see you guys next time.